Just imagine this. You get a call from your elderly father who's living in a assisted living facility, and he starts to tell you about a new love interest that he has. And then he goes on, and suddenly you realize he's a victim of a romance scam, that he's lost 100 or 200 thousand dollars to this phony love affair that he truly believes he's in. Now, I'm here with Scott Augenbaum, retired FBI supervisory agent. And Scott, I just want to dive right into this. I know you're doing a lot of work in the world right now with families, as well as with senior assisted living, with the elderly, even with the youth. Talk about some of these scams that you're working on right now, and what you're doing to prevent and help people save their families.
Hmm. I retired in 2018, Kevin. I didn't think the problem could get any worse. But now the problem continues to get worse every single day. And cyber criminals are going after people like me and you and our families, our kids. And I really want to focus on seniors because that is really heartbreaking for me because every day I'm dealing with different types of victims. And I hate to say it, it's the same story over and over again. And usually, whenever they open their mouth, I could figure it out. And it's usually involving some type of social engineering scam. And that's really what I want to talk about today with the audience and you is about what's going on in the world and, you know, some of the things we need to do. But the first thing we need to do is we need to be aware of how significant the threat is.
Yeah. So Scott, you and I, we get a lot of messages, you especially. I mean, you showed me one recently where it was an extortion plot. But there's a lot of different scams out there right now, and they're targeting the most vulnerable. And these folks aren't necessarily brilliant technologists. It seems like they're more brilliant social engineers. Talk about some of the latest social engineering scams and what people can do to become aware and to prevent themselves from being victims.
Yeah, let's first of all, let's talk about what is social engineering. It's nothing new. It's tricking people into doing something that they normally wouldn't do. When I was a young FBI agent in 1995, almost 30 years ago, and I was working white collar cases, a majority of the cases were wire fraud, where an individual would trick somebody into doing something or believing them. I remember one of my first cases was a guy who had an investment company and what he was doing was it was an advanced fee scheme. He was trying to trick innocent people out of their money so he could get them loans. So what did he do? He created a phony newsletter, but it took some talent. I mean, he had to go out, he had to hire someone, he had to put colors, he had to put pieces together, and that was all about tricking people. And everything was some form of trick. Today, with the use of technology and the fact that almost everyone between over the ages of 8 and up to 90 have one of these handheld entertainment devices called the iPhone or the Android that brings access to all of our finances, all of our bank accounts, everything about us. And the cyber criminals, not through technology, and the technology does play a role in it, but they figured out a way to perfect their evil tricks. And I like to say all the time now that social engineering is the number one tool in the cyber criminals tool belt. And there's so many different variations of social engineering that I want to really dive into it and, talk about some of these scams.
Yeah, and the term con man, it comes from the word confidence. They want to gain your confidence, so then you know, like, and trust them, and then you hand over your money. In the past, maybe it was a Ponzi scheme or something like this, right? Some sort of fraud. But now there's other scams right now because, like you just mentioned, the technology and the access to folks is so much easier. You're just one click away from, being in touch with someone you don't want to be in touch with. And with the data broker sites out there that are selling your personal information, the dark web, which has forums specifically to sell stolen identification and stolen information. What are some of the current scams that you're seeing, Scott?
Well, for years, I would say that phishing was the number one tool in the cyber criminals tool belt. And what is phishing? Getting an email coming from a cyber criminal trying to trick you into some form of action. And what is that form of action? They're either going to get you to download a malicious file, which you'll load malware onto your computer, and they will steal they will steal your money. So that is why we always need to have good antivirus, but antivirus isn't going to pick up everything. The other thing they're going to get you to do is you're going to click on a link. You're going to go to a website, because imagine for a second, and this just happened to someone. Imagine this. Somebody gets an email that looks like it's coming from Amazon saying that your package has been delayed in shipping because your credit card expired. Click on the link. They click on the link, and it takes you to a phishing website. And it says all you need to do is enter your username and password. And what do you think a majority of the population are going to do, Kevin?
Yeah, they go ahead and do it because these people, the site looks just like Wells Fargo or Chase Bank or whatever the credit card may be.
Yeah, and you're not going to get an email from Boris Badenoff at cybercriminal.org, with a big red flag that says malicious file, please do this. You're going to get an email from somebody you know and somebody you trust. And it could come from Amazon, it could come from Best Buy, and it's not really coming from Amazon or Best Buy. It's coming from a trusted third party. Now, your email provider is doing a pretty good job of blocking known bad emails, but the cyber criminals are always coming up with a new and an ingenious way to do it. And sometimes it can't be blocked, because I had a situation that occurred where an individual, this was a kid, had their email account compromised, and they sent an email from the kid to go to the grandparents. And it looked like it was actually being sent from the kid's email account.
Sure.
And they knew the kid was on vacation, and it was like, Grandpa, I'm in trouble. I need you to go to Western Union and please send this money, and don't tell mom or dad I'm in trouble. Unfortunately, what do a lot of the grandparents do?
Yeah, they're going to do that. I mean, they're going to go and do that because they want to be the hero. They want to help. And even Scott, you made me think sometimes I will check my spam folder, and then there'll be things in there that look legitimate. So even if the email provider is doing a good job at catching spam or known fraudulent emails, I still check my spam filter. I see stuff and I'm like, wow, is this an important email? So we really have to be on alert. We have to sort of have this idea that these con men, these cyber criminals are out there constantly trying to trick us. So what's another scam, Scott? That's one, the phishing scam that drives people into stealing their personal identification and potentially money, the Western Union scam. We get this a lot. My elderly parent went down, they took out cash and they sent it in a FedEx envelope. Like what else do you see out there for the elderly folks that are specifically that's targeting the seniors?
Well, and we all do a good job. I mean, it's getting out there, and a lot of companies are saying, hey, we're educating people on the email. But the cyber criminals realize that. If we get back to email, we need to be a human firewall. We need to think before we click. We need to think before we act. If you get an email from Amazon, and it's probably a scam, but if you'd want to make sure, go to the real Amazon website, check it on your app. I always tell people, have your telephone numbers pre-programmed in your phone. So if you get a call from your bank, call the bank. Do not trust the email, and never, ever call the telephone number in the email. Kevin, why should you not call the telephone number in the email?
Because Scott, that is part of the scam. They are waiting with open arms to take your call.
Okay, so let's just say today I have come up with something. I have educated the world, and nobody will ever click on an email. But the cyber criminals will move right down the road. Now, imagine for a second that you get an email, a text message, and it says it's from Visa, and it's saying that Visa says, we believe that your card was just used in a fraudulent transaction in Brooklyn, New York, because today somebody attempted to charge $2,400. Now, we all tell people, think before you click, but there's a 1-800 number in that email. What percentage of the population do you think has a Visa card?
Oh, geez, 95 maybe. I mean,
A
anyone that's
lot. It's a
yeah,
lot.
adult age, yeah, it's
And
95%.
let's even just say that 1% fall for this, and you call the 1-800 number. And when you get the 1-800 number, it's going to say, hello, this is Visa Fraud Department. Thank you for calling. Please enter in, either you're going to enter in your credit card number for verification.
Yeah.
How many times when you actually call like American Express and you have a problem, they ask you to enter in your number?
Right, every time. Scott, this is a great example. In fact, I'll just say here at my house a few weeks ago, my wife got a phone call from Citibank saying that her card had been compromised. Or no, someone had applied for a credit card in her name and they called to verify. Because she's in on these conversations, because I'm in this field, she knows you. She instantly said, I don't believe you, and hung up on them. Right? They were actually outbound calling. They called back and they did a verification with her. Then she trusted him, trusted the person on the line. So it's really important to at least have that moment, that pause that says, should I trust this person? Should I enter in my information? Should I call this phone number? Because you're right. If 1% of the population, let's say it's 200 million people, and they click on that or they call that number, they're just looking for a very small amount of people to steal their credit cards to make a fortune. So yeah, that's a great example.
And
Through
just
Texas,
remember, Kevin, you're not going to get this text message when you are totally sitting here relaxed and hanging out. You're going to get that message when you're in the car, the kid's crying, it's raining. So I always like to think of what's a way that they would get me. So imagine, what's going to happen on the 30th if I get a text message from I forgot whoever sends me my pension check. Okay. I get a pension check once a month. It's always coming on the 30th. What's going to be the first thing that would go through the average federal employee who didn't work cybercrime if they got an email or a text message or even a telephone call saying, hey, there's a problem with your bank account. Please enter in your bank credentials.
yes. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what they do. And this is the epitome of social engineering. They get you when you're most vulnerable, when you're least expecting it, when you're busy, and they're just hitting you right in the sore spot. Whether it's what you mentioned before, where it's the grandkids messaging the grandparent, or it's the person in between you and your money. They're trying to get between you and your most sensitive parts of your life. So
And the
it's
question I get all the time is, okay, so they got your email, they got your text message to send you that. They got your telephone number because we're seeing telephones calls all the time. So we got email, we got text messages, we got telephone calls. The telephone calls look like they're coming from the Social Security Department, the IRS, your local police agency. No one's ever going to call you. Okay. You're not going to get telephone calls from the FBI. Someone's going to show up at your house. So the question I get all the time is, Kevin, I got an unlisted telephone number. Do those even exist anymore? I don't even know. How did they get our telephone numbers, Kevin? What do you think?
uh, well, through the dark web, they download them through they steal them. I mean, they
Well,
basically
the dark web, and they're getting them from all the data brokers. Because
yes.
every single time that you sign up for something and they ask you for your telephone number, because you know what? Now, just think about it. You cannot sign up for anything without giving them a telephone number. And that's why a little advice I give people, always get a Google number and give that out.
Great advice. Yeah, great
But it's
advice.
still, when we'll talk about that after, it still talks about no matter how hard I try to keep myself and I try to keep my kids safe. I try to keep my wife safe. I try to keep my elderly aunts and uncles safe. I have to realize that no matter what I tell them on education, stuff exists on the dark web and through data brokers. So that's why it's always kind of very difficult.
Great. So we've talked about phishing, which is the email phishing. We talked about smishing, which is the SMS or text phishing. What's the other one, Scott, that we need to concern ourselves with?
Well, there's probably about another four or five, but what I always talk about, what's coming up a lot, is the QR code phishing, which is called quishing, because what ends up happening now, and unfortunately, Kevin, we live in a day and age, I know you have a different approach than I do to this, but you are going in. Here I am the other night, and let's just think about this. I had to go to the hotel, the Omni Hotel to see people. I could either pay $40 to park at the Omni, I could pay $20 to park at the lot, or I could pay $4 to park on the street with the QR code. What am I going to do? I'm a former federal employee. So what do I do first? I go over there and I try to pull it off. Is there a sticker over there? Now I am going on, I am scanning my QR code. I'm sorry. I do that every once in a while. But what am I doing? I'm always going to provide them with my credit card, not my debit card. So here's some things we don't want to do. When you're out over in Las Vegas and you see a QR code on a sticker on the wall, hey, free coupons, discounts, don't do it. What's your thoughts on the QR code? I know me and you have I'm a little bit more lenient on it. I got a million things I worry about.
Well, I think you just have to be concerned. You have to pause. I think that's the critical thing here. As you always say, prevention is the key because once the criminals have your data, have your money, it's almost impossible to get it back. So, you know, uh, during the COVID era, we were all programmed to use QR code menus and QR code this and that. The QR code made a comeback. It used to be hard to use, but now they're everywhere. And so I just say be cautious, like be careful. Don't just be flippant and scan anything because all it does is takes one scan and they're going to steal all the data on your phone.
Well,
They're
and
going
here's how they're going to
to
do it. I really would be concerned when you have to go in there. Like, so if you scan the QR code for the restaurant menu, because sometimes it happens, I'll ask the waiter for it. I'm like, sorry, my phone's camera's not working. But if you scan a QR code and it asks you to log in to your email account or any other account, or a totally red flag.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
important.
don't do it. Uh, sometimes we see sports, we're seeing all these sporting events. There's apps, you got to scan the QR code. It becomes a little problematic, but you know what? Eventually, yeah, it's really hard to say, Kevin. Like I don't really like to spend as much time on this as I should. Just as you said, be wary.
Yeah, be wary. It'd be interesting. It might be an opportunity for new technology, a QR code authenticator. Be interesting. But anyway, Scott, what are some of the other scams? I know we've heard some recently. We've had one person reach out to us where their 86-year-old father was caught up in a timeshare scam, which wasn't necessarily cyber, but it was a massive scam targeting the elderly. I know you've dealt with some romance scams and some cryptocurrency scams, as well as Facebook takeover for some seniors.
Yeah.
Which one would you like to talk
Yeah,
about next?
let's kind of go through this, So what did we cover so far? You got to be careful with email,
Mhm.
telephone calls, text messages, QR codes. And the other thing is the account takeover from social media and even other people's emails. Because what ends up happening is you get an email from somebody you know or somebody you trust. Their account has been taken over. But what happens if it's the Facebook account? And here's one of the things that usually happens, and I kind of picked up on this. All of a sudden, we have somebody, I had an elderly aunt in their 80s. I was sitting there with her when I visited her in Syracuse, New York, and I got a Facebook request from her to be her friend. And I was like, I am friends with her. What the heck is going on? And the cyber criminal used her photo to try to get me to become friends because now we're in the circle. So we have to be careful when we have these account takeovers on social media. What's another quick way? Let's go back to the text messages. You're going to get a text message from someone who's going to say, "Hi, how are you?" "Hi, how are you?" They're going to start talking to you, and from there, they're going to try to get you into a part-time work from home scam. Again, another type of social engineering.
Yes. Yes. And what about the romance scams? We're seeing a plethora of these romance scams. What is the
Again, another form of social engineering, tricking us into doing things we normally wouldn't do. So now you are going to be friended by someone. And I had a conversation for 2 weeks with a scam artist who met me on LinkedIn. We just started talking, and here's the first red flag. It's completely platonic. And they are using artificial intelligence, and they are using the most amazing forms of persuasion to do nothing more than build rapport. They ask you to move off of the app like LinkedIn, and they want to get you on WhatsApp or Telegram. When you get hit up from somebody and they want to go to WhatsApp or Telegram, that means that they are out of the country and they can't text you. So they get you on over there and then they build up some rapport. They check in on with you every day. And literally they try to get you to fall in love with them just based on friendship and conversation. They're meeting the most basic human needs. And then they start talking about cryptocurrency, investing in cryptocurrency or other things. So I played along with it and I said to this person, I don't understand any of this at all. They said, don't worry about it. I want you to download this app on your phone for a simulated trading. Now, I didn't download the app, but I know how these apps work. So they convinced me to download the app. And then they said, hey, you have $10,000 in your account with fake money. We want you to play this game and invest it. You take the $10,000 of phony money and they transform it into $135,000 overnight. What do you think happens through the average person when they see $10,000 turns into 135?
Yes, the confidence game. You're building confidence. They're saying, hey, look how good you are at trading cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Now it's
And
time for
then
the real
they
money.
ask you at first, they go like this, do you want to invest $100? Yeah, sure. What the heck? It's like going to Las Vegas. All right. So you invest $100 and it turns into $2,000. And then they say to you, hey, do you want some money back? You want to share your stuff? We'll send you back a couple hundred, but keep some in. So they give you back like $300. Even though they're giving you back the money, you take that remaining money and then they turn it into 8,500. Then you go, hey, I want to invest more. I had one victim, and at the end of everything, this victim believed that they had $297 million in their account.
Wow.
And how did I find out? I got a friend reached out to me to talk about it. Their friend who was the victim asked them for $250,000 because remember, they're bleeding you out. When I spoke to the victim, I asked him how much money he invested. He said $5.8 million.
Oh,
And here's the
wow.
hard thing, and it goes back to my truths about cybersecurity. We're not getting his money back. That money
Right.
is gone. It's in cryptocurrency. Law enforcement doesn't have a magic wand to get it back. Putting the bad guys in jail is challenging because these guys are overseas. They're over in East Asia and it's being run by Chinese organized crime. This scam is called the pig butchering. Why do you think it's called pig butchering?
Well, it's like fattening up the pig and then chopping it up at the butcher shop and divvying it up probably amongst the criminals, something like that, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And I hate to say it, if I had the opportunity to get with any of my victims, I could have prevented them from becoming victimized.
Yeah.
And that's really what we try to do here, Kevin, is we try to help people before they become victimized because every one of them goes, there's some kind of warning sign, and it's just picking up that piece of information.
Yeah. And that's what our goal is here. Stealth Family, Stealth Executive, we are here to basically prevent. That's the whole goal. I mean, prevention is everything. Scott, how many crimes, cyber crimes, have you investigated in your career?
I used to say 1,000 because that was over 20 years. That was 50. That was 50 a year. I think it's like thousands and thousands. And here's the worst part about it, Kevin. And this is what really kind of changed my life. And this is really the epiphany that I had. It was probably in about 2016 or so. After dealing with victim after victim, I realized that there were commonalities. And one commonality, and we have a couple, is that almost all of my victims were victimized in social engineering scams. And if I had the ability to sit with these people before they became victimized, I could have prevented it. So that was a big step for me because I stepped out from going into, remember, why are we in law enforcement? Reactive, running and
Yes.
gunning.
Yes.
But after spending decades in cybercrime, I couldn't get the money back for the people. I couldn't put the bad guys in jail. But if I would have really been able to sit with them and share this information with them, I know I could have prevented a lot of victimization from occurring.
And so, Scott, you're still a premier expert. You travel the country speaking on this topic. Let me ask you this, because I don't know if this is something we've ever talked about before. Since you've been out of the FBI, how many crimes have come to you, or how many victims have come to you looking for help? It's got to be almost 1,000. I
What
mean,
this, what this week are you talking about? Or
I mean, honestly, like a number of things. I get a lot of calls. I'm the cybersecurity expert in my community. People call me. The number of calls in the level of call you get. It's like because here's my experience too. Um, People are first of all they're ashamed and they're embarrassed, and so they don't go to law enforcement, right? But then what happens is, what can law enforcement do? Really? I mean,
yeah,
that's the thing is that you're going to call your local sheriff. I mean, they can't help you. 911's not going to be able to do anything.
I had a conversation today with, you know, I have a victim. He went to www.ic3.gov. Very, very important to really report these things to them. But let me tell you, it becomes a black hole. When I was with the FBI, I was getting probably about 5 to 6 IC3 complaints a week. I was probably getting one a day, and I was picking up the phone and trying to learn and deal with the victims. I called my FBI buddy today, and we're speaking at a conference, and I said, "How many of these complaints are you getting a day?" And he said 100.
Wow.
100.
Yeah.
And it's just it
Is
becomes
that per field office or is that per agent or how many? What is that?
that's just in one geographic area within a portion of the
Wow.
state. Okay.
Wow.
He's getting 100. He's the guy who handles these complaints.
Right. I got it. Yeah, that's amazing.
And it kind of goes where you're handling the worst of the worst. So they're able to triage it. They're only taking the largest cases. So, they're opening up these investigations when there's millions and millions of dollars at loss. But what's happening now is that person who lost their life savings of $3,500, they're out of luck. And even the guy who lost 5 million's out of luck.
He's out of luck, right? There's a saying you hear sometimes is when seconds count, the police are minutes away, right? In other words, we have to be able to take care of ourselves. It makes me think of when seconds count or minutes counts, like the feds Not only are they hours or days away, you get in line between those 100 people that have already filed complaints.
Well, and remember, there is the strategic priorities of the FBI,
Yes.
and we have to remember that we're really in a Cold War with China. We're dealing with Russia. We're dealing with Iran. We're dealing with North Korea, who are all trying to attack critical infrastructure. And that leaves our families the weak link in this whole thing. And when I get calls from people now, I hate to say it, I'm almost like hospice.
Yeah. Man, that is very well put and very well said. As a family, as a husband, as a mother, in this digital age where you have to protect both your children, your teenage children, if they have a device or a gaming console, you better protect them. And then you have to concern yourself with your aging parents, the seniors. So you're really fighting this digital battle, this cyber battle on the home front. That's the only place because after what you just said, it made it really clear to me that the priorities of the federal agencies is to protect sort of the critical infrastructure. How could they possibly protect your family? So this is one of the reasons that you and I always discuss education first, because the most vulnerable victim is the one that doesn't know. They don't know about the threat landscape. They don't know what to do. They don't know what the threats are out there. And then the person who doesn't have the technology or the solution in place to be able to handle things when they happen and isn't being proactive, taking information off the data broker sites or monitoring the dark web or have the credit freezing in place and doesn't have that person to call. I just think of some of these victims that call me or call you, and if we weren't in their lives, they wouldn't know who to call. They're literally just throwing their hands in the air.
I just dealt with a victim a couple of weeks ago. It was the cousin of another retired FBI agent. He called the local sheriff's office because he lost 350,000. They never called him back. He reported it to ic3.gov. He was waiting for the FBI to call him back. And it just breaks my heart because, people end up losing faith in the government. They lose faith in local police. And all I'm trying to do is say, okay, what do we need to do? Hire more law enforcement to try to fight bad guys overseas. We need to educate people. Education, a mixture of the right technology, is probably the most important thing you could do today to protect yourself and your family.
Scott, thank you so much. What a powerful conversation. Where can people get a hold of you? Plug your book, please, and then we'll say goodbye for now.
Yeah. Well, you could follow me on LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. I'm having conversations. I'm meeting with people. Scott Augenbaum, just look for the big smile on my face. I wrote a book called The Secret to Cybersecurity, a simple plan to protect you and your family from cybercrime victimization. I talk a lot about the cyber secure mindset, and I have a website by that name because it's a lot more than just going out and buying a piece of technology. It's about being aware of the threats, knowing what they are, and not dealing with it in a 3-hour college course. And we're trying to take bite-sized pieces of information and then partnering with you, Kevin, and Stealth Family and Stealth Executive. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, you and I have co-authored a book, and it's basically the 7 scams, and that'll be available for free as a download for folks who visit stealthfamily.com. That'll be up here in the next couple of days, and that'll be something, just a great resource. And when you download that book, we'll put you on our mailing list for our newsletter that will get you the latest cyber threats and some simple ways to educate your family. Scott is also, I mean, Scott is the expert in this field. He's the leader in this field. And Scott has been creating all sorts of great videos, both long form videos and what we call nano videos or micro videos, where it's a 30-second just quick hit that you can share with your kids because you really have to inform. This is part of being a parent now. It's being a digital parent. So having Scott on your team and me on your team as well is very helpful, and we could help educate and help hopefully prevent some of these disastrous incidences from happening. Because let me just add one thing here. It's not just the loss of money. That's hard enough. It's not just the loss of data, which creates and presents its own threat, but it's also the trauma that you go through when you become a victim. It changes your life. And Scott, I know you've seen this firsthand as an agent and after being an agent in retirement, but it changes you. And so we want to avoid not just the loss of money, but your energy, your emotions. Like we want to protect you completely. So anyway, Scott, thank you so much. Anything else to say? Any final words?
I have one goal here today. I hope to never meet any of you.
That's right.
I rather you watch everything, learn from us. We're here if you need us. But listen, if 90 to 95% of things easily could have been prevented, why don't we just do this first?
Well said, my friend. Thank you, Scott. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.